Welcome back to Small Ball with Kenny Beecham. Today, I brought in a very, very special guest, my boy Cone. You might know him as one of the biggest OKC Thunder fans in the world, is what he was telling me. I don't know if he's going to live up to that, but we do get to talk about a lot of OKC and the biggest surprises to start this year. I mean, hey, we can't predict it all. We're going to be wrong. We're going to be right. Definitely going to be some surprises along the way. All I need from you at home is to leave a like on the episode if you're here on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend to tell a friend if they need their NBA fix. This is the place to be. And if you're listening on Spotify, on Apple, or wherever you get your podcast, give us 5 stars as we continue to try to climb up the ranking to be the #1 basketball podcast in A. I need that. I want to give a very special welcome to OKC's biggest fan, like Twitter fan, I guess we could say. Cone, welcome to the show, man.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. I call myself the #1 Thunder fan, but every time I say that in a video, there's always like 3 or 4 people that are like, you're not a bigger Thunder fan than me. You don't know what I've been through. When I do, I 100% get it. But yeah, man, appreciate it. I'm glad we finally got the chance to sit down and do a video together. I know last time we were going to do one, I got my wisdom teeth out, not at the best timing. So I'm glad I don't have to get teeth ripped out of my head before this one.
You know, I'm on the track for that too, man. These 2 back here, they said gotta go. I guess the ones on my right side are fully in and not causing any problem. So I think I might have to get that done in like a month or so. So if you ever need me to be on your show or on your channel, I'm gonna have to use that as an excuse as well.
Yeah, it's okay. I already used it as an excuse. You know, I dodged once, I couldn't dodge again. So you've got that still in your back pocket. That's fine.
No, this is a perfect time to have you on though, because as of right now, your favorite team, your OKC Thunder, are still undefeated. I mean, even we saw the Boston Celtics lose a game. You guys are left with the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. So you've gone through, again, the ups and downs of an OKC fan. How is it feeling now being one of the favorites to do the thing?
It's weird because last time they were legitimately like a contender was, I mean, last year you can talk about it, but there was like, oh, is the experience still there? Last time they were like one of the favorites was back in 2016. And I'm 24, so I was 16 years old. So I don't like, I mean, obviously I remember it, but I'm way more into basketball now than I was then because now, you know, I do it for a living. Like I live and breathe hoops at this point. And so to be able to watch my favorite team and know like they have a real shot of raising the Larry O'Brien trophy. And I've already told everybody this, like if they win the finals, it will be the greatest day in my life. I don't know if anything will ever top it. So it's a super surreal feeling. And it's crazy how quickly they got here because I know there was all that, you know, when they tanked, there were some moments where I was like, you know, they had, there was games at the end of the season where they're playing like Georgios Kalazaitis and Josh Hall and, you know, Poku was going crazy for some double doubles. Rest in peace, my agenda that Poku might become an all NBA player someday. There's a TikTok edit of me saying that. And then it transitions into Poku highlights. He's now playing overseas. It's fine. But going from like that just a couple of years ago to now, it's Shea's an MVP level guy. And I mean, Chet right now is taking the leap like before our eyes. He's going crazy. And the stuff that Dub's doing out there. And then the defense of Caruso, which thank you again, man. I appreciate it. Although Giddey might be in the 3-point contest this season. So maybe we both won. You know, Casey Wallace out there is one of the league's best defenders now. It feels like too. Watching like Lou go from guarding James Harden and having that whole game 7 with all the threes where he was like considered one of the worst offensive players in the league to now being a really solid 3-point shooter, had his own 3-point contest on ESPN last night. I don't know if you saw it. It's just crazy. And Isaiah Hartenstein hasn't even played yet. They've kind of sleptwalked to these first 4 wins where they look like pretty solid for the first half. And then third quarter, fourth quarter, they're like, oh yeah, we're the Thunder. And then they just end up winning by 12 plus points. They haven't like won a game by less than 12. The Spurs win yesterday was the smallest margin of victory so far. And it is a surreal feeling, man. I can't believe that they're here right now.
Yeah. Small sample size is like the name of this episode, but based on the game so far, you guys have the 2nd best defense in the history of basketball.
Yeah. I feel really good at, you know, small sample size. I like to say it's, you know, compared to, you know, 5 or 4 or 5 games played amongst teams, I would say that is a very average sample size for all the teams that have played so far. But I mean, I was saying before the season, it could be a really good defense. But I mean, so far, it's even surprised me because, again, iHeart hasn't even played yet. And they've still just been destroying people on that end.
Yeah, yesterday we had the matchup, Chet versus Wemby, this rivalry that we I want it to be a rivalry, but so far it hasn't been because the Spurs kind of are stinky.
Yeah.
And even yesterday, you guys held Wemby to like the least amount of points of his NBA career so far. And I thought it was very interesting, like the way Mark Daigneault has you guys, I never pronounce his name right, by the way, has you guys defending where like originally in your mind, it's Chet versus Wemby. These dudes will be guarding each other for 30 plus minutes. This is what it really is. But a lot of times you guys opted to do like, it felt like a tandem type of zone where it was Alex Caruso as like the primary defender on Wemby and allowed Chet to be like the super roamer. And anytime Wemby got close to the basket, they were sitting 2 to 3 bodies. And you guys have just done a phenomenal job. And I got to see it firsthand when y'all played against the Bulls a couple nights ago of just not allowing the star players to have a star type performance. And it's like, if it's not Wemby, it's going to be Chris Paul who hit a couple threes, and we love that for Chris Paul.
We do love that.
Or if it's not Wemby, or it's Harrison Barnes who put the ball on the floor for a heavily contested lay. I was like, we're going to eliminate your star, and we have all the tools to do it. I've said this before on this podcast. I don't know if you've been locked in, but like I think that the 2023-2024 Boston Celtics are going to go down as one of the most influential teams of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're starting to see like Coach Mark is what Joakim Noah was calling him yesterday because he can't pronounce the last name either. Coach Mark kind of adopting some of the stuff Drew Holiday has done defensively with Alex Caruso. And I find that very, very interesting because they have similar molds of like the way they're built and, of course, the motor and being such a great defender, where we did see Drew Holiday being able to guard true fives and let Kristaps Porzingis or whoever it may be play the roamer, and that's Chet right now, and he's been phenomenal. The opening day when you guys played against the Boston Celtics, that was all the sample size I needed to say Chet is the favorite to win DPOY this season. Like, that is the thing. You mentioned the leap. It's happening before our eyes. Me and my boy D Mills got $100 on this season for you guys. And the question was, who would average more points? We know Shea is going to be first, even though he started off slow for the MVP candidate. Would it be J-Dub of Chet? And I put my money on J-Dub, and he's also started slow. And right now, it's through 4 games, Chet has been by far the more impactful player.
Yeah, I mean, if you would ask me, I would have said Dub as well, because last season, whenever Shea wasn't on the court, if it wasn't Giddey, it was more likely J-Dub handling the ball. And we would always go into, he would play the first full 12 minutes. And they've changed the rotation a little bit now. He's checking out towards the end of the first quarter. But he would play the first full 12 minutes. Then second quarter would start. J-Dub would come in, do all the ball handling, do a bunch of scoring. But specifically, that same rotation going to the fourth quarter is when he would turn up. It would be like, Shea's off the court. Here's the chance for the other team to make the run. And then Dub would do his thing in the fourth quarter. But now, he's still doing all that stuff. Just some of the shots that he's hit the past couple of seasons aren't quite falling yet. But like Chet, the way that they've allowed him to handle the ball, and I figured they were going to do a lot more ball handling with him now that the usage from Giddey is gone. But it's been even more than I was expecting. And he's just taken full advantage of it. I mean, last night, that play where he tried to throw it off the backboard and dunk on Wemby, I might have gotten banned off Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, if that happened, because I would have tweeted that like 15 times in a row. That would have been the only thing I tweeted for the next week. The fact that he's just trying stuff like that, he's knocking down a lot of those like little turnaround mid-range jumpers. The touch around the basket is amazing. He's fighting into contact more, getting to the line more, which to be a great scorer in the league, you've got to be able to get to the line. A lot of people would hate to hear that, but it's true. Unless you're, like Steph Curry, who just doesn't get respect with the whistle.
Right. He's an anomaly.
He's Steph. It's what he does. So yeah, man, I always believed in Chet. He was my favorite player going into the draft class. Even if the Thunder didn't get him, he's the player that I wanted. And when we were able to grab him at 2, I was like, this is amazing. This is the exact guy we need. But this is, I guess, now technically his 3rd year after being drafted, but it's his real 2nd year. He's just doing stuff that is ridiculous. I believe he's already right there in top 5 big converssations. It's,
I can't be mad at it right now.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was going to get pushback there. I appreciate it.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, do we count Joel Embiid, who hasn't played a single second?
I'm counting him.
Okay, so let's go Jokic, Embiid, AD in some order, because AD's been phenomenal as well.
For sure.
After that, the conversation was like Sabonis, it was Bam, it was Wemby, and I could argue very easily that Chet has been the most impactful of all 3 of those dudes so far to start this season. And that's no shot at Domantas Sabonis, who's been phenomenal as well. But again, we're talking about DPOY type of defensive production and also averaging 20 plus points per game. I think he's there. I think he's there right now. And the question is, will he be? Oh my God, producer Greg is in the comments saying Zubac.
Hey, Big Zoo, He's been going crazy. I can't even lie.
Yeah.
Zoo Alcindor has been going nuts over there in Los Angeles.
Something about DeAndre Ayton, though. Jokic said that was his toughest guard. And now we just saw Zoo, who's averaging 22, have a game against Ayton where he put up 6. So DeAndre Ayton might be in DPOY conversations too.
We'll
shout out
have
to
make
Zoo.
sure to throw him in there with Zoo for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Maybe that's enough, OKC. We'll have you back on the show in the playoffs. You guys are going in the finals against the Boston Celtics. I want to talk about the biggest surprises to start the year. I've said it once. I'll say it again. Overreacting to the first week or month of the season is so very fun for me. To have this as like one of the main reasons I make content on sports is to have like this book of all of my takes, all of my great ones, all of my bad ones, all of my overreactions. And I think part of surprises to start the year might be a little bit overreactionary. So I'm so excited to talk to you about what you've been seeing across hoops, but I'll give my first one.
Okay.
This was higher on my list before last night. The Clippers are not as bad / boring as I thought they were going to be. They were a team that when I was predicting NBA standings, which is always a tough video to do every single season, I had them like 12th to 13th in the standings. And the main reason behind that is I was so damn tired of the Kawhi Leonard stuff. How long will he be out? So on and so forth. You just missed out on Paul George. He's gone over to Philly. So it was really like James Harden, Zubac, and some cool role players, right? Yeah. And when I saw the preseason thing where James Harden felt vindicated because Luka Doncic made it to the finals, that type of system can work. And I was just completely turned off with a mid-30s James Harden being this focal point. He's second in the NBA right now in usage, only behind Giannis. And hell, they're 2-2 to start the year. And the 2 losses that they had is because James Harden turned the ball over late in the game. Even last night on the out-of-bounds play, he threw a terrible pass to Zoo. But they're 2-2. They're 24th-0. So the offense has been bad with James. Yeah. But the defense, it's the defense that makes it fun. My KD is Chris Dunn, has been phenomenal coming off the bench, 2+ steals per game. Derrick Jones Jr., former Bull legend as well, also doing his great thing. He had a double-digit point game, 20-point game the other night. But the most surprising thing is Norman Powell, who has been this notorious 6-man shot chucker type of guy. Sometimes he's hot, sometimes he's cold. So far this season, he has been scorching. And I don't know if that's going to last forever, but to see him come off screens and take 30-foot three-pointers has been crazy. And the second unit has been amazing as well.
Yeah, I mean, as a Thunder fan, if the Clippers suck, that's huge for me because Cooper Flag and OKC would be kind of fun. I also had them, I believe, 12th or 13th in the standings, especially when we had that Kawhi Leonard news that he was going to be out indefinitely to start the year. It just felt like the vibes were so bad. You know, it felt like a moment where they're just holding on, doing whatever they can to try and remain relevant because they gave up so much to make this era happen. But I didn't think it was going to happen. And they've been nice. I can't lie. I mean, every game they've been in, like you said, even the 2 that they lost, one was to Phoenix in overtime, and then the other one to the Blazers, who have started the season surprisingly decent as well. And that was only because of a bad inbounds pass. There was a couple of plays that go their way, and they're 4-0 right now. And James Harden's been great, orchestrating the offense the best that he can because it isn't a very talented offensive roster. But yeah, if you like defensive basketball, this is a team that's going to go ahead and just completely muck things up. I think against the Warriors, they forced like 20 something like that turnovers. It was a lot. The Warriors were just completely flustered going up against the Clippers. And I would love for them to be worse, but I can't lie. I've been having fun watching Clippers basketball, seeing James Harden do what he does, shout out to Greg. Zubac's going crazy, just, completely taking over games. It almost feels like a 2000s basketball type of team where you've got the point guard just dishing out a bunch of dimes. You've got a shooting guard that's going to chuck up 1 million shots and score 1 billion points. A big who's just down low in the post, hitting like hooks and stuff like that. Playing this kind of gross, like defensive type of basketball with the offense is not super fun to watch, but defensively, they're going to really make some highlights. I have enjoyed it as much as I should be rooting for their downfall, and it ultimately does help my favorite team. Yeah, man, they've been for sure better than I thought they would be, especially without Kawhi. Even with Kawhi, I wasn't expecting the biggest things from this team, but with him not out there, starting off 2-2 is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I watched yesterday, and that was the Trailblazer game. And the entire time I'm thinking, like, okay, so we saw the nationally televised game. That was the first real home game they've had in the Intuit Dome. The wall looks phenomenal. Kevin Durant is missing multiple free throws. Devin Booker missed free throws and so on and so forth. I watched it yesterday, and maybe it's the lighting of the arena. It looked pretty damn empty. And I'm like, this is a brand new arena. I cannot wait to get there. And I was so surprised that it wasn't that many bodies. But one of my favorite things about basketball specifically is watching on League Pass and not having commercials, but instead I get to experience the arena from home. So you get to see what's going on in the Jumbotron. The Intuit Dome is ridiculous, man. They have like remotes on every single chair where you can vote. They were playing siblings or dating on the screen, and you can vote green or blue. And I was like, yo, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And they're incentivized to participate. So Steve Ballmer is a crazy man, is willing to spend billions of dollars, it looks like, to create a team and make his fans happy, which is pretty cool. But I do think with them starting off this way, it got Clippers fans in my mentions with like trade ideas. And early season, it was a lot of Zach LaVine Clippers thing. But in order to make that happen, I think it guts the team a little bit too much. It's Trey Mann, it's PJ Tucker, who's not on the roster anymore, and it's Norman Powell. And then one of the guys that tweeted at me that originally, he replied back to his tweet like 4 days later after Norman Powell had the 30-point game and was like, actually, I don't think it's that much of a difference between Zach LaVine and Norman Powell. And I'm like, hold on. One of them can do it consistently as long as he's healthy. And the other one is a little bit up and down. So it puts them in a very weird spot because they don't own their own draft picks and it's going to OKC. They're not really incentivized to do the whole blow up thing that some people expect. So they might continue to be maybe a little bit above 500 all season long. Maybe make a play and push and lose in the first round potentially. But still, that's better than giving Cooper Flag to OKC.
I completely disagree. And I'm honestly upset that you would even say such a thing. But yeah, no, man. They do feel like a team that if someone becomes available and there isn't that big of an asking price, they could take a little bit of a swing. Again, like you said, the salary has to not be too crazy for them to not completely gut the roster. But I mean, if someone becomes available, even if it's not like a superstar, like an all-star caliber player, like maybe a fringe guy, just someone they're willing to take a flyer on, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Steve Ballmer, like you said, is willing to spend billions of dollars to make like a basketball playground with 1 billion bathrooms. So I'm sure he's willing to shell out for whatever to make this team kind of hang around for a little bit longer. Because at this point, they don't really have any assets to do the whole blow up thing.
Yeah, I mean, there are some teams that have started off better than expected. I guess we'll probably get to some of these later. But I'm looking at different candidates. It's like, do they care about spending $26 million a year to get Kyle Kuzma? That feels like not a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Brooklyn has a bunch of good role players like Cam Johnson has started off pretty okay start this year, but the Brooklyn Nets are surprisingly okay also this season. So I do believe that if they stay similarly around 500, that they will try to take somewhat of an upgrade. Maybe that's Brandon Ingram, who's less than Zach LaVine in contract AAV, but you're going to have to pay him this offseason. But anyway, give me another one of yours.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'm going to, talk about a team that I wasn't sure how they're going to perform this season. I think everybody was down on them a little bit, but it's been bad. The Nuggets have looked really bad to start this season. Now, they did just get a couple of wins, but it was overtime wins against the Raptors it's an injured team. And honestly, if Scottie doesn't end up getting hurt and with that eye injury, I think the Raptors win that game. And then the Nets, who, I mean, Dennis Schroeder, Thunder legend, might just be the most improved player. He's scoring like 30 a game out there. So maybe they're good. But those are two teams, if you're the Nuggets, you really don't want to be going to overtime against. And it's taken just absolutely heroic efforts from the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. If he wasn't Wilt Chamberlain with a 3-point shot, they are probably 0-4 right now. He's been dominant in the way that he usually is, but it almost like right now looks to me, and the supporting cast is more talented than this, but it's almost giving me like 2016 Russ vibes, where Russ was like, I'm going to do everything I can, just turn into an absolute hero to save this team. Now, that supporting cast, didn't have a Jamal Murray and a Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon. It had Samaj Christian. It had a Joffrey Laverne, guys like
stretch forward Domantas Sabonis.
Stretch forward Domantas Sabonis. What a dark era of OKC basketball. I was talking about the ups and downs. Stretch forward Domantas Sabonis, trying to turn him into that. Might be the worst thing Billy Donovan's ever done. He kind of had to, but like the fact that it's taken these absurd like performances from Jokic to even get to overtime and win against these teams. Against the Raptors, he had 40, 10, 4, 1, and 2 on 18 of 27 shooting. And they had to go to overtime to beat that Raptors team. 29, 18, and 16 last night against the Nets to win in overtime. Jamal Murray still doesn't look like the guy that we're used to. MPJ, I know against the Thunder, threw up, I think, 10 threes and hit 3 of them. And there was that one three where he started to pull up with it and kind of hesitated and like threw it over to Aaron Gordon in the corner, which I don't know if I've ever seen MPJ pass up a 3. Even contested, wide open, it doesn't matter. You could have 3 dudes guarding him and he's still going to shoot. With that one, the fact that he's passing it up like Christian Brown, sometimes he looks confident, sometimes he doesn't. Russ, shout out to my guy, had a great game against the Nets, but other than that, it's been pretty rough to start the season. Maybe they're just figuring it out, but I still projected the Nuggets to be a 2 seed because I was like, I don't think they're going to go as far in the playoffs. I didn't have them as one of my top 2 teams to win it in the West, but whenever they've had Jokic, even that season where MPJ is out and Jamal Murray is out, they still got to, I believe, 48 wins as the 6th seed. So now that he has those guys, even if, you don't have KCP and you worry about the bench, that should still be enough to get them to like 50, mid-50s wins. I don't feel nearly as confident in that anymore because they just really can't shoot. And the defense has been abysmal against some of these teams that they really should not be struggling like this against.
Yeah, I mean, having a guy like Jokic, and Jokic is in the top 1% in history when it comes to making your teammates better. Like there's only a few people ever to be as good at that one specific thing. It's a blessing and a curse, man. The blessing is obviously we can get away with not having the super duper star talent alongside him. The curse is, well, now because Jamal Murray technically is our second best player, he warrants a max contract. Because Michael Porter Jr. gets all of these open looks generated because Jokic is so damn dominant, he now warrants a max contract. And because of that, they've pigeonholed themselves with their core 4, and they don't have wiggle room to make the other roster spots better. I think my prediction for them was 5 seed. I had them towards the bottom of my contenders. Like I had 7 contenders going into the season. They were 6 or 7. Mostly based on respect, right? Respecting that they have Nikola Jokic, who's the best in the world, and respecting the infrastructure. But a lot of that has really changed. Like they've never been a high frequency 3-point team throughout the entire era. Hell, they were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams of the modern era when it comes to like comparing it to what the league average was. But this year, they're dead ass last in 3-point attempts per game. That is absurd. The only teams around them is the Toronto Raptors, who we don't expect to take many threes. They're not a very good basketball team. The LA Lakers, which is also looking like it's starting to become a problem after the last 2 games that they lost. And like the Pelicans, who we don't expect to get up threes either way. And it's hard to say that we're going to be a team that could win every single night if we're not shooting threes. And the one thing that saved them previous years was that they weren't allowing other teams to shoot threes. Well, nowadays, they're middle of the pack when it comes to the opponent 3-point frequency. They were able to get by saying, we don't shoot threes and you don't shoot threes. And now they're kind of letting other people fly. And like you mentioned, that Michael Porter Jr. moment, it's ingrained in my head because I have never seen him do that before. You are a career 40% 3-point shooter on great volume, and you passed up to Aaron Gordon, who his best type of years is league average. That blew my mind. And that's just the lack of confidence that you're seeing on the roster right now. And again, they're able to squeak out a few wins just because they have the best player in the world. Like the game versus the Brooklyn Nets was insane that they were still letting Dorian Finney-Smith guard Jokic in single coverage late in the game. Like they missed a free throw. It's a 2-point game. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it that Jokic is going to get to his bread and butter, little post hook on Dorian Finney-Smith, and they go to overtime. And that's where the experience definitely picked up compared to a young and not so great Brooklyn Nets team. But the fact that on back-to-back nights, it goes to OT against teams that we project to be pretty bad this season, it's not very promising. But I do believe that they could still be a team that wins a bunch of regular season games. I just don't know how far I can project them to win this season based on the way they're currently constructed.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Thunder were just like anybody shoot. Like Jokic gets the ball, Chet's guarding him, but if he gets 2 down low, we send another guy. And if anybody shoots, it's a win. Like if MPJ shoots, you don't love it, but you kind of live with it. We left him open for like 1-3, he hit it, and then we kind of played him a little bit more, weren't really rotating off of him, just sending the double off someone else. But there's not a lot of lineups they can throw out there where there are 5 competent shooters. And not every team can do that, like kind of OKC can do and Boston can do. But the fact that there's a lot of combinations where it just doesn't work. And with the Nuggets, they did something that feels very wise to the new CBA, where they brought in all these young players to try and develop in the background while you're doing that. I mean, the Thunder are doing it right now. Like AJ Mitchell just went off against the Spurs on national TV. So he's one of those guys. Cason Wallace made a big impact as a rookie last year, and he's developing. The Thunder have really tried to do this, and we have so many draft picks still in the future. And I believe with the new CBA, that's kind of what you have to do if you want to maintain a long-term heavyweight contender, is you bring in a lot of these draft picks so that you can keep getting young, cheap talent in, because, with the new aprons, your draft pick moves to the end of the first round and suddenly you can't bring in any more contracts than you're sending out. The Nuggets have kind of tried to do that. They just haven't really hit or developed anybody yet. Like Peyton Watson, I love the defense, but that one airball three he had against us where it just sailed like 12 feet past the rim, it's not great. Like that, you need him to hit shots. And Christian Brown's been pretty good, but yet, he's not ready to be a KCP replacement quite yet. Julian Strother's had some moments and a few of the other guys, but it's just like Zeke Naji. I know you were big on him.
God, that was one of my worst ones, man.
I saw someone tweet out, a Nuggets fan be like, like Jay Huff, like Jay Huff go, which I'm a UVA guy, so it's cool to see him balling for the Grizzlies. But they're like, oh, they let him go and Isaiah Hartenstein. What if Zeke Naji is the next guy? I'm like, I promise you, he's not the next guy in that line. Which the Isaiah Hartenstein, Jay Huff to Zeke Naji pipeline is a crazy one to even go down if you're a Nuggets fan. But just they haven't found a lot of hits. And honestly, that's kind of the same thing with the Milwaukee Bucks. So I'm sure we might talk about as well. It feels like they've also kind of done this thing where they've brought in some young talent, just none of it has really hit so far. You're seeing the effects of that.
Definitely. Okay, I'll give you another one of mine.
Okay.
And it's not a team or a player, but it's like free throws are back, man. I remember watching the first couple of days of the season, and I was like, this feels weird again. I know we all remember that post All-Star, they let the boys play a little bit tougher. We saw less whistles. We saw less fouls. The games are going by faster. And I thought that was a really fun part of the NBA year. And I'm just watching some of these games like, man, we're getting a lot of free throws. And I was like, maybe that's just because I haven't seen basketball, like NBA level basketball, since the summertime. Maybe I'm tripping. If you go look at the numbers, the whistle's back, man. 25.7 free throws per game is the most we've seen since 2007. Wow. The free throw rate is at an all-time high in the 2020 or the 2000 era. And I feel it every single night when I'm watching these games. I'm like, okay, that call wasn't being thrown out there once we got to March of last season. And I don't know what changed. Like Adam Silver is very adamant to say that he didn't change anything. We didn't tell them to call less fouls, but obviously something happened after the All-Star break. And it seems like it has reverted back to, what it used to be. And we still don't have some of the biggest foul drawers in basketball playing to that level just yet. I mean, the random role players are getting to the line more than I expected. So that was just different. And I don't know if, again, small sample size, we're talking about like 100 games played so far this season, but it was interesting to me to see the whistle not be swallowed as much as previous year.
Yeah, I figured they were going to come into the year with kind of that same format like we saw after the All-Star break last year, because it seemed like everybody really liked it. All over Twitter and NBA media spaces, everyone's like, oh, this is cool. It's, they're letting them play more physical, and this is a really fun brand of basketball. And I didn't look at the numbers specifically yet, but I feel that too. I remember a few days ago sitting down to watch a Sixers-Raptors game. I was like, I'll see what this is about. And then they shot 99 combined free throws in a single night. And I don't think I stopped hearing whistles for the next 3 days after that game. Like every 5 seconds, it sounded like one was coming from somewhere behind me. Like, how does it even happen? Joel Embiid's not even playing, so you can't even blame him for this.
Yeah.
Like, if he was playing, that game might have lasted 6 hours and there was 400 free throws. The way they were calling whistles with that. I mean, I know like the Thunder were playing the Hawks the other night, and Trae Young was getting a lot of that foul call where he like dribbles into the lane and a guy is behind him and he suddenly stops and pulls up and he gets bumped from behind, and that's free throws. I remember for a little while they took that away. They're like, that's an offensive foul. You can't do that anymore. It feels like they're kind of just letting the old stuff that they got rid of happen again. I know Dame the other night, there were a lot of people, mad on my timeline because Dame was playing unethical hoops, getting like 18 free throws out there. And people are like, what happened to Dame? He used to be the savior of non-free throw basketball. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they would change it completely back and why they keep doing this flip-flop. I feel like call it one way. People liked it. I liked it. It was cool at the end of last season, not hearing as many whistles. And sure, it was, tough to see some moments where I'm like, that was a foul, because earlier in the season it was, and adjusting my mindset to that to not be so mad at the refs. But it did feel like a better, more organic brand of basketball where we weren't being bogged down by a million free throws per game.
Yeah, I feel that. And I wouldn't even call this a complaint for me personally. Like either way, like I'm there, I'm going to watch the hoops regardless. Sure. It was just, a real contrast to what we saw last year. And that was just something that surprised me. Maybe these numbers even out because, yeah, like you mentioned that one game, they set literally set a record. So again, small sample size, maybe that outlier is making it so that it's that. But again, we have a pretty big sample size as far as total games. I think I said 100. It's been 67 game sample size so far this year. And it's not even close to the most free throws per game in a season because in 1957, do you want to hear this? Yeah, right. 1957, they were attempting 38 free throws a game.
How were they doing anything else? Was that the whole night?
That had to be it, man. That had to be it.
Oh my God.
I don't even know how we get here. How do you get to 38 free throws a night?
I'd ask for a refund. Like I'm not paying for the ticket if I'm watching 38 free throws.
But back then they knew no better. They thought that's all who was. George Yardley, was leading the league in scoring all from the free throw line.
Yeah, man. I mean, they were shooting on still like the peach baskets from James Naismith's like gym still. Like they were doing that just nonstop at the free throw line. So I get it. People didn't know better. They weren't ready for the mid-range hoops that would come soon.
Exactly. So, give me another one of your big surprises.
Another big surprise. I mean, is Buddy Hield just the new Klay Thompson? Like it's crazy because I wasn't a believer in the Warriors. I remember watching some of your stuff that you became more of a believer in the Warriors after like the preseason and in your standings predictions and stuff like that. I didn't really buy into it. I was like kind of similar with the Clippers. I was like, they're just holding on to relevancy here. And maybe they fall off because last season they started, I think like 5-1 with CP3. I'm like, oh, bet my guy, Chris Paul, because you actually have a Chris Paul guy here on the podcast, but I'm like Thunder legend Chris Paul. He's playing really well and Steph's looking good and they're going to be really good this season. And then they ended up missing the playoffs. But I mean, right now they're 4-1 right now with Steph Curry not playing the past 2 games. And maybe that's more of an indictment of the Pelicans who have looked bad so far to start the season. It's either Zion has the best touch of all time or has the worst touch of all time game to game. But Buddy Hield right now, 21.2 points, 50% shooting from 3. And it's on a lot of attempts. He had 12 attempts last game, 11 the game before, 9 the games prior, 5 of 7 against the Blazers. I mean, he just can't miss. And it's been fun to watch him in that offense. They're using him in kind of Klay Thompson ways. And Buddy Hield is one of those players where I know there's like the Buddy Hield cycle meme where it's like he comes in and it's like, oh, this is the best player ever. He's awesome. Why don't more people want Buddy Hield on their team? And then he slows down a little bit. You're like, okay, he'll be back. And then he's just not playing well. Like for the Sixers, he started off great, ended up falling out of the rotation, then had that insane game in game 6 against the Knicks that I was actually at with my brother, who's a Sixers fan. And every time we've gone to a playoff game together, it's been a disaster. It was that one. And we were at game 7 of Hawks Sixers when Ben Simmons did not shoot the basketball. Wow. So yeah, the Sixers need to ban him from all future playoff games. But it just feels like, Buddy Hield goes through these cycles. But the way he's shooting right now, I mean, he might just be Klay Thompson again. And I've said before on like live streams and my channel that Buddy Hield is one of the greatest shooters ever. And I've gotten pushback. But if you just take a look at the numbers, like pure volume and amount of threes that he's hit, he is in that conversation. But even I could not have expected him starting the season this good. He looks better than Klay did so far last season. And I don't know if that'll hold, but it's been crazy.
So they're 4th, as of today, they are 4th in 3-point frequency, which is crazy because this is the team that kind of evolutionized the game to tell the world that you should shoot threes. And they've, again, evolved to the point where they're towards the top of the league in 3-point shooting. It's been amazing to watch. Now, they have had a cupcake schedule to start the year. It has been as easy as can be when you go against the Blazers and the Jazz and the Pelicans twice. Like it has been pretty easy. But I think all of that is pretty good to get the reps up. Yeah. One of the reasons I picked the OKC Thunder, oh my God. The Golden State Warriors had nothing to do with Buddy Hield himself. Because I didn't know. Like he got DMPs in the playoffs until the one magnificent half, and then he basically didn't play in the second half at all. So I didn't really think about that. I was more buying into AirPods, who started off slow. I was buying into Kuminga, who has been bad other than when Steph Curry hasn't been on the floor. So all of the things that made me excited about the Warriors, that's not even what's making them pop right now, which I think is pretty funny. But I also had a Warriors thing on mine, and I went the opposite side of the ball. It's the defense, man. Yeah. You guys have the best defense in basketball, the OKC Thunder, and then the Golden State Warriors are second. And again, cupcake schedule, whatever. But last night, on the second night of the, what they call the baseball series against the Pelicans, Zion shooting 5 for 20 on layups is disgusting. And a lot of that is Draymond Green / the Warriors in general, because even Kevon Looney got in there and had some great defensive possessions. But this is a team that's going to shoot a lot of threes, and they're defending like there's no tomorrow. And that's beautiful basketball. I want to see what it looks like when they play against one of the juggernaut offensive teams, because they are still really, really small. But when you're going against a guy like Zion, who at least in height is pretty small. Producer Greg said, after the next 2 games, they have the Celtics, the Cavs, the Thunder all in the road. Gonna learn a lot. Yes, we will learn a lot about that defense and that offense. And unfortunately, Steph Curry's gonna be missing for at least part of that. The best thing about the Steph Curry injury is the timing. Like, I think they only had these 2 games this week and back-to-back against the Pels. So, just in general, the Warriors have looked better than even I expected as one of the people that were pretty high on them.
Yeah, I gotta give a shout to Draymond. I know a lot of Thunder fans hate him, and I still don't love that he kicked Steven Adams and, below the belt. But Draymond is just one of those players that, the jumper looks like he's wearing a backpack, and there's going to be a lot of triple singles, but just defensively, as long as he's out there and healthy and not punching people in the face, he is just one of the most impactful defenders to ever play the game of basketball. And it's cool to still watch him. I mean, how old is he at this point? Like, he's
34.6.
Yeah. He's it's like when a little kid's like, yeah, this is my 34 and a half birthday. I don't know why little kids say 34 and a half. Whatever. Anyways, Draymond has been really good. And I know he had a post-game interview moment where he said, all summer, everybody was talking about Wemby and Chet, but don't forget about Dre. And I'm like, okay, let's slow down a little bit. But he's been great. I have to give him his flowers here, and the Warriors as a whole, because I didn't think they would be very good. And with the defense and Buddy Hield being the best player to ever play the game of basketball, they've put it together. And even with an easy schedule, I mean, they've been blowing these teams out so far. So I got to give him credit.
Draymond himself is shooting it pretty well to start the year on top of that too. And it's not like, we talking about some insane amount of volume, but the shot is falling, and Draymond plays his best when he's also activated offensively. So it is pretty cool. The actual percentage, let me see, fell 50% from 3, 6 for 12. You take 6 for 12 from Draymond.
Yeah, for sure.
Last year he was 39%. So maybe in his mid 30s, he's starting to turn around, because when he was 25, that one season, that magnificent 15-16 season, he was a 39% 3-point shooter. Then after that, it was 20% range. All right, I'll give you another one. Anthony Edwards' 3-point volume is so surprising to me. It's because crazy. He was in the class of that boy nice. And a lot of that boy nice dudes are heavy mid-range jump shooters, get to the basket, throw it down, yada, yada, yada. So far this season, last year, 38% of his shots were in the mid-range. This year, it is down to 27%. Last year, 30% of his shots are from 3. 53% of his shots so far this year are beyond the arc. And that is an absurd number. And one of the reasons why it's so surprising is it kind of eliminates his penetration. Like, he's not getting to the rim nearly as much. But if you've watched like the game versus the Dallas Mavericks, it was almost impossible for him to get to the rim, because when he has the ball creating or as the facilitator in the offense, Julius Randle typically is sitting on the wing or in the corner, and teams are not guarding Julius Randle there whatsoever. So it's like, we're just going to clog the paint to prevent Anthony Edwards from even getting down there. The good thing about it is that he's hitting a bunch of these threes as of right now, so it hasn't hurt too much. But I don't know if he spent this whole offseason shooting 3-pointers and that the percentage that he's shooting now is just going to be him. I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy, because so far he shot through 4 games. It's 25, 40, 53 threes. Yeah. If you told me that Anthony Edwards could shoot 53 threes through the first 4 games, even with the new spacing concerns now at Cat's gone, I would have said you were insane. Like, there's no way he's taking that many, but he's just chucking them. They are flying. And I know that first quarter against the Mavericks, he had 4 or 5 threes in that first quarter. He was going crazy, and he's hit. I mean, they're falling. So that's, you can't really complain about that, but it would still be nice to kind of see him get his head down a little bit more, because I don't know if this volume and this efficiency is going to sustain itself. Maybe it is, and I'm wrong, but it feels like if he comes back down to earth a little bit, that's where the worry about the Timberwolves and the spacing there with Randall being in town alongside Rudy Gobert really starts to come to fruition. Jay McDaniels too, it's up and down with him. Some nights he looks great, some nights he's really off from the outside. That was a concern that I know a lot of us had. So maybe he's just like, I'm just going to try and eliminate that. I'm just going to become the best 3-point shooter ever, and then that'll really open up the spacing. But I would prefer if the spacing was just opened up for Ant himself to attack downhill. He can be that great 3-point shooter and be that, mid-range assassin at times, but like getting downhill and being at the rim as a top like 0.0001% athlete is kind of where I would love to see him be, because, you know, I want to see him dunk on people too, just from a pure entertainment standpoint. Threes are cool and all, but I would also love to see Anthony Edwards dunk on somebody. And this goes a little bit to, I know there's been that super prevalent conversation on Twitter and stuff like, oh, they need to make changes to the NBA. Like, I know there was one, I can't remember where it came from. There was like a comment or something like that said that they should add like a 3 in the key, but for the corner, to try and eliminate that type of spacing. I'm like,
where did I hear that? Oh my God. That was, oh man. Okay. It'll come to me.
Okay. Greg says Simmons. So it might've been Bill Simmons who said it.
Okay. Okay. There we go.
Yeah. That sounds about right. But I don't know. I feel like I've been having fun watching the hoops. I know there's been a little bit with the free throws and stuff, but outside of that, I mean, I feel like it's been a great brand of basketball to start the season. It's just kind of the evolution of the game. I don't think we need to add 3 in the corners, or I saw some people say completely eliminate the corner 3, and I've never been really a big fan of that. I just don't think there's really much you need to change right now. The game is evolving and things shift back and forth. Like the 3-point revolution, you know, it continues to come along, but there's going to be some type of counter to everything. It's just kind of the way the sport works. So
yeah, I remember those conversations, and I understand the people that may not like the way it's going. Again, that's not me necessarily, because the way the shots are generated continues to evolve, right? So the way the Boston Celtics get their 3-pointers up is completely different than every other team in basketball, and so on and so forth. And if you don't like 3-point hoops, then go watch the Denver Nuggets, who we talked about being dead last, or the LA Lakers, who go with their big man being their best player. Like, whatever brand of ball you really want, I think it is out there. Like, yes, we're going to shoot more threes in 2024, 2025 than we did in 2008, which is like the prime time for a lot of old heads. But I still think the hoops is amazing. Like, as of right now, as a league, we're attempting 37 3-pointers per game, which is the most for a very, very, let's just say a very long time. Yeah, that's a lot of 3-pointers. That's the most ever. How about that? Yep.
That's a long time. Yeah.
Well, who knows? You know, back in 1978, they didn't have a 3-point line. They might have been taking the longest 2s in history. We don't know.
There's a chance.
We don't know. The first year that the 3-point line was incorporated, they attempted 2 per game. Nobody liked it. It was just like, this thing is here. We don't trust it. Foot on the line, 2-pointer.
Yeah, man, that must have been disappointing. They're like, oh, we're going to put this new 3-point line in. Like, you can get more points. You shoot like a little bit further back. They're like, nah, long two, turn around midi.
Right.
There's no time for that.
I wonder how many of those are just like end of the quarter heaves or something like that. It's like they're not even true in the offense.
Probably a good bit of them.
Yeah. Man, who was the greatest 3-point shooter of 1981? What a conversation.
There's a video if you're looking for one.
No, somebody has it. Do you have any more funny things or surprising things so far this year?
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple like in the same division I can run through real quick. I mean, for your Bulls, they're looking solid.
Let's go.
Like I had to put them in there. I mentioned earlier Giddey in the 3-point contest. I mean, he's been hitting threes. Like, he's been knocking them down. I love the way y'all are playing. I saw you tweet about like all you wanted was them to play fast and shoot threes, and they're doing both those things so far. Mm-hmm. It's been kind of a fun brand of basketball to watch. I don't know how long it's going to sustain itself. I'm sure you've got a better thought on that than I do. But I, so far as an outside viewer, have enjoyed Bulls basketball to this point.
Yeah, me too. I talked to Joakim Noah yesterday, and Joakim Noah, of course, is still ingrained in Bulls basketball. He played at Florida when Billy Donovan was there, so him and he said Billy Donovan is like his second father. So I asked him about the new brand of basketball, because historically, even when we were winning championships in the 90s, they were always a slow team. Even when Derrick Rose, we had the fastest player in the league, but we had a slow pace. And I asked him about the new brand, and he said Billy, for the entire offseason, he had the guys do conditioning. That was all they did all offseason. And you can kind of see that where the few wins that we have, the 2 20-point comebacks that we had back-to-back games, it felt like the Orlando Magic ran out of gas. And the Bulls still had a lot in the tank. And it's been, again, just a fun brand of basketball. Is it sustainable? Probably not. We do have somewhat of a cupcake schedule coming up. I think it's the Brooklyn Nets, the Toronto Raptors, and the Jazz. So we could be looking at like 5-2 if things go perfectly.
They might be hosting that playoff series that AK talked about.
Can you imagine? I would have to publicly apologize to him, because when he said that, I thought that was one of the craziest things to ever come out of a person's mouth. Looking at that roster, you want to host the play-in series? playoff series.
Yeah, not even be in
Crazy.
one, host one.
Hosted is crazy, but like everybody's completely bought into the fast style. Even Vucevic, who's a slow-footed center, is bought in completely, and he's playing his best basketball as a Bull, which is great because I do believe their goal is still to move off of Vooch and Zach LaVine. So for both of them to be having a good season to start off makes it easier to eventually convince a team to take 4 years of $40+ million of Zach LaVine. But yeah, Josh Giddey, 17 3-point attempts, 10 of them going in. Nobody's guarding him at all. So he hit one yesterday. They're so open. Oh my God. He hit one yesterday and he like showed emotion. And I've watched Josh Giddey a good amount with him in OKC. But for him to be that emotional for like, foot on the line, his foot slightly behind the line, 3-point shot. I don't know if he ever hit 3 threes in a row before. Maybe that was what it was.
I don't think so. There might have been like one moment, but I think the other stuff that happened this past season probably erased it from my head. So
yeah, 100%. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird dilemma. I think when I talk to Bulls fans with the Josh Giddey stuff, because obviously he's on our favorite team, so we want to root for him. We want him to be great. Hell, we traded the heart and soul of Chicago to get him. But everybody is still a bit iffy because of the stuff he was involved with over the offseason to be like, I want to root for Josh Giddey. I don't know if that'll ever really change because we as the public don't know everything. And the bits and pieces that we do know just don't look necessarily great. So it is just a weird dilemma because I've had to deal with this a few different times as a Bulls fan, even with Derek, right? Derek was in the case for what, he allegedly did. And it was easier for me because when that happened, I was 13. And when you're 13, you don't think about morality. You don't think about being, the moral police or anything. So it's just a weird dilemma. But he has, if you eliminate, and this is going to sound crazy because we've only played, 5 games? If you eliminate the first 2 games of the first 2 games of the year for Josh Giddey, he's been the perfect player for the Bulls, man. Like his on-off numbers look disgusting because those first 2 games were a struggle. Yeah. But since then, it's been pretty cool. And I was afraid for Kobe White and his production, now having Zach and having Josh Giddey, but he's still super productive. And he has learned his own superpower of relocating. And I think the great shooters in basketball all have the ability to relocate to open space and get that shot off. That's where we're at with Kobe White right now. That's his individual development. And I'm glad you brought it up because I felt like if I would have brought it up, they'd have been like, here go Kenny again.
Nah, I got
propaganda.
You let me talk about the Thunder. I had to let you get your takes off about the Bulls. Yeah, I'm happy specifically about the Kobe White thing because that was one of my big worries was Giddey's now going to have the ball. And last season, Kobe went off because he got to finally have the ball in his hands. I was worried about that, but yeah, he's still been great. Had that crazy game against the Bucks, who are the other team. Like quickly is one of my other surprises. It's been a struggle for them. I know Chris Middleton, but I don't think he's saving that defense that has looked just slow-footed and terrible. They're dropping on everything and leading to a billion wide open pull-up threes or mid-range jumpers. The rotations are slow on open shooters because they're just not they're not a young athletic team. And like I talked about the Nuggets, I mean, we just got news right before this that they're not picking up the 4th-year option on Marjon Beauchamp, who's going to be an unrestricted free agent. The guys that they've drafted to try and build up this talent hasn't really worked. Gary Trent Jr.'s looked like fine, and Torrey Prince has had some good moments. I mean, he's playing the most minutes some of these games out of anybody. That's the Darvin Ham effect, I guess. The two of them are best friends forever. It's just like, I thought they would be a top 3-4 seed. I was like, Dame's going to bounce back, and Giannis is still a top 2 player in the world. But I don't know, man. Since they brought in Doc Rivers, they were like several games under 500 as a basketball team. I just don't know if it's not going to work. And then today we got the report that there are people around the league that are keeping an eye on Giannis. Like, could he request a trade at some point soon? Before the season, he had that quote where he was like, if we don't win a championship, I might be traded, which feels like a very weird quote for Giannis, like coming into the season. But he's been always one of those guys that makes those hints when he's unhappy. Like before they traded for Drew, he's like, I want to be here, but we got to make things happen. And then before they traded for Dame, same thing. I know he talked about the Bulls at one point. He's like, I'd love to play in Chicago at one point. And maybe Giannis,
he would have all the spacing in the world if he comes here.
I was saying maybe Giannis, Josh Giddey, and Kobe are going to be running Chicago in a couple of years, or maybe even next season. Right. Just, I don't know, man. I thought this was going to be a bounce back for the Bucks, and they have looked rough so far. And every time they play someone, somebody's going off for at least 30, maybe even 40. I know Kobe went crazy. Cam Thomas did. Dennis Schroeder in 2024 cooked them.
Yeah. It's rough because they feel like they're stuck in 2019 defensively. As the league continues to evolve, like we mentioned, the most 3-pointers ever per game, they continuously, again, I understand wanting to take away the layup. It's the easiest shot in basketball, but there are other teams in hoops that eliminate both of those things. And they're just not one of those teams where like drop coverage is super effective at what it does, but it also allows the smaller guards, which is their biggest problem right now, to have the games of their career. Dennis Schroeder, but okay, maybe it wasn't. Dennis Schroeder just might be him. I mean, honestly,
he might just be that guy.
Yeah. But Dennis Schroeder having that type of performance, again, Kobe White being able to do what he does, it's so many open looks for their opponent. And I, again, don't know how to fix it. They're another one of those teams that I had as a contender out of respect of them having a top player and winning one recently. But boy, it's grim over there, man. Like I have Bucks fans in my life and they were just like, we have two top whatever players in the world and I'm not excited to watch us play basketball. And that's crazy, but I understand it because it's an ugly brand of hoops right now where it feels like there's like two different teams offensively. It's when it's Dame's time and then it's time for Giannis. And very rarely does it feel like it coincides together. And another one of those things like the Denver Nuggets that I do expect to be able to still win a bunch of regular season games. But once we get to 7-game series, it's hard for me to say this team over some of the other teams out east. And Doc Rivers, oh my God. We talk about a dude to wear one accolade forever. Shout out to Kevin Garnett. Because if it wasn't for KG and Ray and the Truth and a young Rondo, Doc would still be broadcasting, man. Like, what is he like? He's coached some really good regular season teams.
Yeah.
Some of those teams happen to have one of the greatest point guards of all time in Chris Paul. Another one of those teams have one of the best original big threes in history. Like he's always had something. And now he's got one of the biggest forces in all the hoops in the history of hoops, if we're being real. And having a sub 500 record when the guy that you replaced was 13 games over is crazy to me.
And that was a guy 13 games over who literally lost the locker room.
Yes.
And I know they were a little bit healthier under Adrian Griffin and the schedule was a little bit easier, but that big of a difference to a guy who lost the locker room and they had to fire midseason as the 2 seed is completely wild. And I remember the second they fired him, it was like, oh, could it be Doc Rivers? But it's like, nah, there's no way a team makes that mistake again. And now a 4-year deal later, or 1 year into a 4-year deal later, they made the mistake again. I just don't know how like front offices don't see it. I don't know, man. It's tough with Milwaukee. I made a video before the year basically saying like this might be the end for them. It feels like this is like their last chance. And Bucks fans were mad at me saying, you know, you're overlooking it. They're going to be better this season. And I believed it. I was like, they will be better, but I just don't know if they're quite a championship contender. And through the first few games, playing some easy teams hasn't looked like it.
I got a few fast ones before we get out of here.
Okay.
Everybody told us his rookie class was going to be bad. I didn't think it was going to be this bad, man. Like,
yeah, it's been wrong.
I didn't think it was going to be this bad. Right now, Bub Carrington just last night became the first rookie to put up a 15-point game. That is the longest it's taken for a rookie to put up 15 in the history of hoops. Like, that's a crazy statistic. He himself is leading rookies in points per game at 10.5. If he so happened to average that all year long and he was to win the award, that would be the lowest point per game for any rookie of the year winner ever.
Wow.
Insane. And I still think he has competition. Like even his own teammate, even though Alex Sarr can't hit a goddamn shot right now, he's averaging 8, 6, and 2.5 blocks. Like I think Alex Sarr could still win this award. But they said this class was going to be bad, and it has been. Like it has had its surprises, right? Jonathan Mobo or Jamal Sheed or Yves Messi, like some dudes later in the draft have been productive in their small amount of minutes. But to have a class based on the previous years, we've had a Wemby, and Chet technically, then we had a Paolo. Like we've always had a guy. So far, we do not have that at all. And it's kind of just a weird time for rookies. Yeah.
And then you've got Zachary Rissachet having that quote where he's like, back in France, I was a good athlete. Now I'm just normal, which you don't want to hear from your number 1 overall pick. One of my friends is like, nah, I would have gotten that quote erased from the internet. I'm not having that one get out there. So not exactly what you want to hear, but I mean, it's fine. AJ Mitchell's going to save the rookie class. Don't worry. It'll be fine.
He has the opportunity to.
Yeah.
And the last one I got, it's in my notes, it just says Dennis Schroeder. And we've said his name a few different times on this episode, but like he's picking up point guards full 94 feet and also dropping 20 plus a night. Like that's just a hard thing to do. This is a team that I had Their over-under was 17.5 or 18.5. I said smash the under. They already have 2 wins on the year, and then a few other games that they lost based on the last 2 minutes of hoops. Like, they've looked like a competent team. So that's cool. And then the Pistons did get their first win last night, so that was cool. They started off as awful as can be as well, being the worst fourth quarter team in hoops. But those are like my biggest surprises on the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shout out to Dennis Schroeder, 25-8 right now. Should have won 6 Man of the Year in 2020, but I won't get into that. We'll be here for another 30
He had
minutes.
my vote. But also, like, people, before I get you out of here, people accuse me of being a secret OKC fan.
Mm-hmm.
And here are the reasons for it. Shai's rookie season, he was my favorite rookie in the entire class. I don't watch college ball until this year. This year I will watch, but like I watched his first summer league game and I fell in love with him as a player. And there's a video that exists on House of Highlights' YouTube channel. His rookie season is when they gave me my first 10-day contract at House of Highlights. So I was creating content for them and I was recapping summer league games. And I was like, this guy with a really long name, he's nice. And I didn't think he was going to be an MVP candidate, but he was my favorite rookie. And then he gets traded to OKC. He's traded to OKC. And he also teams up with my favorite point guard in the history of the game and Chris Paul. So now one of my favorite players is teaming up with my favorite young guy. That's pretty dope. My favorite rookie in his draft class was Cason Wallace. Didn't know he was going to end up in OKC, but he was my absolute favorite rookie. So like, and then we have all the connections between Billy Donovan, being a coach of our teams respectively, and the Taj Gibson trade. Like the Taj Gibson trade is one of the craziest. No, it's not that big of a deal, but
it's huge. It really changed the course. Yeah.
Joffrey Laverne. Like, come on, man, that changed history.
It did.
And I also am just a guy that enjoys good hoops, and you guys have played good hoops over the last year. So it's hard for me not to like blush when talking OKC because things have been great.
Yeah, I mean, you're also just a ball knower, so you get it. So that makes sense too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, yeah.
I appreciate you coming on, Cole, man. We got to have you do this again. Once OKC continues their run, maybe it's one game before they end up 82-0. It was when we come and talk to each other again, or it's the playoffs or whatever. But I appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, of course, man. Appreciate you having me.
Of course. So we talked about DPOY early in the season. It's a fair race, man. Going into it, Victor Wembanyama was the very, very heavy favorite. Hell, he told the world, Rudy Gobert, this is your last one because I'm winning a bunch. If you go to FanDuel Sportsbook, Wemby is not the heavy favorite anymore. Now, granted, he is the favorite, but he's tied with Chet Holmgren of the OKC Thunder, both plus 220. We got guys like Bam Adebayo, who's off to a very rough start. The team is off to a rough start. I don't know if I would bet on that at plus 1,000, but you got Anthony Davis also plus 1,000. He's also been a monster. We got great defensive players in ball. Evan Mobley also anchoring one of the top defenses, and Jaren Jackson Jr. got the respect being a former DPOY winner at plus 2,600. It's gonna be one hell of a race, and I do believe one of these guys on this list will end up winning it. Make your first NBA bet a bucket with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So check this out. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. But FanDuel wants everyone to enjoy NBA hoops this season. That's why they're giving existing customers and new customers 3 months of NBA League Pass. For new and existing users, all you have to do to catch every tip-off and every buzzer beater is play any $5 bet on the NBA. You definitely don't want to miss out on LaMelo's dimes or Paolo Banchero's dominance. Let FanDuel know that we sent you by scanning the QR code on your screen or visiting FanDuel.com/Kenny. And place any $5 bet on the NBA and get 3 months of League Pass. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. I want to introduce producer Greg to the show. We're going to do our favorite thing, the 5 out. How are we feeling today, Greg?
I'm great. Before we hit start on this 5 out, I loved the praise you guys gave Draymond, you and Cone, and his defense. Have you checked out his new podcast with Baron Davis?
I didn't know he had a new podcast with Baron Davis. No.
It's a rebrand, but Baron Davis is the co-host. But it was so funny. Last episode, they were talking about Steph being out, and Baron Davis was trying to hype up Draymond as an offensive player. I was like, dude, like you got post moves. Like they should throw you the ball in the post. And I'm like, Baron Davis, have you ever watched the Warriors play? Have you ever seen Draymond have a post move?
What was Draymond's response to that?
Draymond was kind of like, oh yeah. I'm gonna start being more aggressive, but I think it was kind of like trying to play it off. And because Draymond is a very self-aware player, he knows very much who he is, and he knows that creative offensive moves is not his strength.
No, I'm gonna have to check it out. As someone that knows a thing or two about a rebrand, I know it can be tough because they got lost. I thought Draymond Green podcast was still a thing. It's got a new name and everything, huh?
I think it's the Draymond Green show with Baron Davis.
Okay. I like that. Okay. I'm gonna check it out.
All right, let's hit start on the 5 out. Go. This is a weird one, but Jeff Van Gundy is now a Clippers assistant. Does that matter at all to you?
Not really. I actually saw him the last night game versus the Trailblazers. He was off the bench, like pseudo contesting a shot from Anthony Simons, and I was like, "What the hell is that about?" Does it matter? I'm sure in the grand scheme it might matter a bit. Like I think coaching is just one of those things that's hard to really determine who's doing what, other than it being the head coach. And Tyronn Lue's been a great head coach in his career. It might matter. It probably doesn't. I don't know. I have no idea.
All right, next one. Do you think Maxey can ever be a 1A on a playoff team?
Ever? Yeah, I think it could be in the cards for him. He is overtasked right now, though. Like it's rough for him to have to attempt 30 shots a game and get to the free throw line this amount of times for them to have an opportunity to be in a game with the Detroit Pistons. Like that's a problem. I think he'll probably spend the majority of his career as a 1B or a 2. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I always am a bit hesitant with smaller guards in general when it comes to leading a team, but he is the perfect 1B or 2. But I never want to put a ceiling on a player. So yeah, I don't know.
All right. And last one here. There's a limit on team challenges, coaches, challenges. I think there should be a limit on the amount of times a player can indicate that he wants a challenge if he gets a certain amount wrong. So Draymond was 3 for 3 until last night, and he got one wrong. But, he's kind of earned the trust from Kerr to continue challenging. But my view is that if a player, so he does it, twice that he gets wrong and the coach gets it wrong, the player should no longer be allowed to signal for a challenge.
Or to be like a technical foul or something.
Yeah, something like that. Or a fine or something.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. This whole motion bothers the hell out of me, whether it be the first time someone do it, the 100th time. Even in the Olympics, it kind of shifted. Like it's not even just an NBA centric thing. Like the form.
Oh, that was so annoying.
They were telling them to go to the monitor. It's like, oh my God. I'm not against that whatsoever, man. And the Golden State Warriors were dead last in percentage of reviews that were right, because I think it really is just Steve Kerr saying, okay, I trust my guy enough to say, let's challenge that. I didn't realize that he was that successful to start the year. I would be completely cool with it. There are a few things that bother the hell out of me as a viewer of the game. That's towards the top of the list. And the second one, it's just a jump pass. God, I despise to watch these players jump to pass the ball, because a lot of the times they get lost, and LaMelo's averaging 7 damn turnovers a game.
You sound like my high school coach.
And maybe that's where I'm getting it from, because Coach Dick Lovick, who was my coach in high school, you would get benched if you threw a jump pass, even if it was successful. So maybe that's just ingrained in my mind. I was a 0 jump pass type of dude because I like playing basketball, but I hate watching it now because even at the highest level, the success level is still really, really low.
My coach used to say, all right, jump in the air and don't come down until I tell you.
That's good.
But Halliburton, I've seen it do it a lot. He doesn't turn it over that much on it, but you have to be so sure of yourself to jump in the air and pass.
Yeah, I'm going to give her a shout out again. Caitlin Cooper, who's a writer, she does a lot of Pacers stuff. Last year, or maybe that was 2 years ago, she wrote an article about the jump passes specifically about Tyrese. And I remember he had his tunnel fit was a shirt that said jump passes are cool. And maybe LaMelo saw that shirt and was like, you know what? They are cool. Well, they're just not on the same level as jump passers. So, yeah, he might be one of one in that very unique skill. This is always my favorite part of the episode, when we get to hear from you guys at home. #AskKB. You can hit us up on Instagram at EnjoySmallBall. All you got to do is send us an original message, which could be in one letter, and then you can send an audio message. Let's see what we got.
Hey, Kenny. Hope you're having a great day. Love the new podcast, man. I just wanted to say and ask about Do you think, with the Thunder having 10 first-round picks through the 2028 draft, do you think this year they should trade and go all in for a veteran superstar? Do you think they should move their picks back into later drafts? Or what do you think the best thing for them to do right now is? Thank you, man. Hope you're having a great day.
Thank you. What a great question. I wish we had Cone on for, because I wonder what his perspective is as an actual fan of the team. I think that they've done a pretty magnificent job at hitting at least one draft pick a year. Like the Pokusevski, not so great of a pick, but he was drafted with also some pretty good guys. That is an absurd amount of pick, which is also one of the reasons why I was so pissed off that we didn't get one for Josh Giddey. I don't know what the real solution is, because when I look at that team, they are as complete as you can imagine for a team being that young. And even their best players are still developing, right? J-Dub, Chad. I mean, Shea just hit 26 years old, and Cason Wallace was a real rotational player. And like all of these dudes are still under 26 years old. So in my mind, you introduce more lottery picks, it just becomes more of a problem. I think Mark Daigneault has done a phenomenal job introducing the young dudes and having them buy into the system and the culture where, like, yeah, I was a top 10 pick. I should be getting 25, 30 minutes a game, but I'm okay that I'm not, because we're winning basketball games. I like the idea of them moving back in the draft, and they did that a few different times in this last draft class, where it's like, we understand that we got a pick right here. Nobody here we really love, so we'll trade this first-round pick for a future first-round pick for somebody else that is in love with this draft. I don't like the idea necessarily of them going in to go get that superstar player. This is, in my mind, the first year of real contention, right? So I guess we'll kind of learn more about this team. So if they flame out in the second round of the playoffs and we have a real idea of the reason why, because even last year we have an idea of why they flamed out. Luka Doncic is one of them, but they were playing a guy in Josh Giddey who was not being guarded and just couldn't play rotational real minutes. And they got outboarded like crazy. Chet Holmgren is rebounding the best of his career. They brought in Isaiah Hartenstein, who's a rebounder as well. So they've kind of shored up some of the question marks from last year. And I would expect if they didn't win it this year, they try to replicate that, shoring up all of the question marks from this playoff run.
Is it time for the Spurs to move on from Greg Popovich? We know their roster isn't, contention worthy, or their offense isn't great, but their offense has been absolutely terrible through the first 4 games, and Wemby getting 5 shots is inexcusable.
I can never, ever, ever, ever advocate for Greg Popovich not to be the coach of the Spurs. But what I will say, what you said is completely true. I think that a lot of the offenses in basketball have become more unpredictable. Maybe unpredictable is the word I'm thinking of, while the Spurs one is very predictable. And that's with them having he's well past his prime, but having one of the highest IQ players of all time, and Chris Paul is the point guard. Like when I watched that game versus the OKC Thunder, they couldn't generate a shot for their best player. And part of it's like Wemby, one of my biggest dislikes about Wemby is he's a floater, where he can kind of just exist on the basketball court. And I feel like when you're that damn good, you can't do that. I mean, the best players in basketball, of course, we get possessions where a guy like Bron is off ball and he's kind of existing. But Wemby does it way more than a lot of dudes. And part of this is, hey, this is year 2 of his NBA career. But I do believe they need some shot in the arm. I'm a guy that did not think they were going to be very good this season, even with their additions of the older dudes. But I also am going to pause on saying that their offense is going to stay bottom 5, because their best individual creator in Devin Vassell hasn't played a second yet. And I do believe he'll alleviate some of that pressure. Or like, shout out to Julian Champagnie, shout out to Jeremy Sohan, who's been holding it down. But Devin Vassell as an individual creator kind of opens up the game a little bit more. And I'm curious to see if the offense shifts a little bit once he comes back. But they are really missing real weapons. And that's like, the Chet versus Wemby thing is going to be there forever, right? I think with them not technically being in the same draft class, but being in the same rookie class, if you will. Chet, and this is not taking anything away from him, has a luxury of having the amount of spacing that he does, with him having Shea and him having J-Dub. Wemby doesn't have that luxury, where you can throw 2 to 3 bodies at Wemby if you want to, and nobody else on the court is going to make you pay for it. And I think in time that won't be the case, because you would hope that Stephon Castle hits as a draft pick, or you hope that Devin Vassell continues to progress, and whatever lottery pick you get this year, would it be Ace Bailey or Cooper Flagg? I don't know. Just alleviate some of that pressure. And They could get more creative, but I will never say get rid of Pop because the NBA dies a little bit if Pop is not there. I'll say that.
Is Coach Spo causing problems in Miami, such as Bam and Jimmy getting limited touches, not playing Kelly Ware, etc.?
The Kelly Ware is an interesting thing because Thomas Bryant is playing over him, and I think TB hit 2 back-to-back threes when I was watching them this morning, and I was like, okay, TB. Kelly Ware just might not be ready, right? I know we see the summer league stuff of him putting up a 20-point game. Even in the preseason, he had a 20-point game. Spoelstra is one of those guys that has earned the trust for me personally, that if he doesn't believe a guy's ready to be in the real rotation, he just won't do it. And I'm going to trust that. I don't like their new offense, though. It was very intriguing going into the year. I know you remember me saying that we were asked about their pace. I told you that their pace weren't going to be as fast as it was in preseason. They're still one of the worst or the lowest paced teams of basketball. But the whole 5-out idea, it was again a better idea than it is in actuality. Where Bam is still yet to hit a 3, if I'm not mistaken, 0 for 2 in pretty much every single game. And I think the main problem, the thing that they held their hat on, the defensive side of the ball, has been awful. If you would have told me that their starting lineup would be the second worst starting lineup unit in basketball, only behind the Spurs, I would have called you crazy because I knew that the defense was going to be the thing they can hang their hat on. But little did we know, playing 2 small guards, bad for your defense. Did we know that? Yeah, we knew that. But I expected Bam Adebayo to be able to cover everything up. He hasn't been able to do that this year. It's been a rough start for him. I trust Spo defensively more than anything. The offense for the Miami Heat just hasn't been good in the Spo era or the post-LeBron Spo era. But the defense is the one thing I thought was going to be there. And this year, their guards are getting picked on like crazy. Franz Wagner, Karl-Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson. Pretty much every game they've played. Cade Cunningham. Every game they've played, I'm watching Tyler Hero fight for his goddamn life on a screen. And it's like, this is not a brand of basketball that I'm used to for the Miami Heat. So hey, if you're a Heat fan, you want to get rid of Eric Spoelstra, I promise you there will be a lot of teams in basketball that will take him off your hands. So you don't know what you got into is gone, is what I will say. He is still one of the best coaches in basketball, even with the slow start. I appreciate you watching or listening to this episode of Small Ball with Kenny Beecham. Shout out to our good friend Cone again for stopping by to talk some hoop with us. If you are a YouTube viewer, I'll put his link in the description so you can see his channel. He's uploading pretty much daily NBA takes and opinions and stuff. And I thought he killed it on this one. So you should check out his channel. Leave us a like, subscribe. I'll see y'all next week.